Hello, everyone. Good evening from Sydney, Australia. Welcome to the Jewish Independent webinar, the Iran Agreement, Risk, Relations and Regional Impact. My name is Dr. Shahar Burla. I'm a contributing editor in the Jewish Independent, and I would like to start this webinar by acknowledging giving acknowledgement of country. I'm at the moment speaking to you from a Camaraga land, and I want to acknowledge their people and their leaders and whoever, and welcome whoever Aboriginal or Torres Strait the Islander that are with us tonight. I want to start by introducing our two wonderful speakers. We're very lucky to have them. Doron, which is a regular contributor to the Jewish Independence. And Dror is a member of the Amit Terrorism and Intelligence Research Institute in Israel, served 17 years in the Israeli government. It's a great accomplishment, Dror, 17 years. He was an analyst and for the senior analyst in the Office of the Prime Minister of Israel, where he regularly briefed senior decision makers and development in the Middle East, particularly on Hezbollah. He served as fellow at Harvard University Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs Intelligence Project. Dror holds a bachelor and master degree from Tel Aviv University. He's fluent in Arabic, English, and Hebrew. Welcome, Dror. And I would very much want to welcome Dr. Thamar Eilam-Gindin. She is an Iranian expert. If any of you open
Iran
TV,
expert.
Iran expert. If any of you have been in Iran, Israeli TV, you could not miss her. She's a regular contributing to many news and TV programs in Israel around the latest conflicts. She's from Haifa University, the Azari Center, Tamar?
Esri Center.
Esri Center for Iran and Persian Gulf Research, and author of multiple books on Iran, on pre-Islamic Iran. With her books, lectures, social media activity, and mass media interviews, she built bridges between Iranian and Israeli nations, opening eyes on both sides to see that the other side is human. That's correct. The other side is human. And I want to welcome you both. I want to start actually in a point of time that I think that really led us to the current situations that we are today, which was the protest, the Iranian protest that started, that began on the 28th of December 2025. And I want to start with you, Tamar. If you agree with me that that was a really turning point on what we are at today, and can you give us a bit of a background on the protest, what happened during the protest, the violence, the killing, and all of that?
It's definitely one of the turning points. When Iran is free at last, that would be one of the dates that people will say the revolution started. Another one would be Mahsa Amini's death in September 2022. But this was definitely one of the big turning points. It started from the same place that we got to, that the previous wave of protests got to. The Woman Life Freedom protests were much more widespread, because up until then, the protests were limited to big cities or to certain certain areas or certain sectors. And starting from the Woman Life Freedom revolution, it was all over. It was in such small villages that you need to vocalize the name of the village. I assume everybody here knows to read, at least about Hebrew. The script is without vocalization. You need vocalization marks to know how to read the names. It was already in the Women Life Freedom protests. It was all the ethnic minorities and, of course, ethnic majorities together on this. It was men and women together, not only like the hijab protest, which was mostly women, or other protests, which were mostly men. The level of violence or chutzpah of the protesters was also something that we saw an escalation in the Women Life Freedom protests, and another one in the January protest that's called the Lion and Sun Revolution. In the Women Life Freedom revolution or protests, clergy were afraid to go in the streets wearing their clothes, their clergy clothes. They only got dressed when they got to their offices, hoping that the angry mob will not break the glass of their offices. Because there was a TikTok challenge of going after a clergy that walked in the street with their turban and throwing the turban in the air. There were protesters that were chasing security forces and shouting, "Be sharaf, be sharaf," which means it's not literally, but it's very close to shame on you. You're lacking dignity. So the protest was a direct continuation of this. And another thing that happened, another wheel that cannot be turned back, that happened in the Women Life Freedom protest, was that Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi stopped acting like Simba and stepped forward as a leader. Up until then, he cooperated, he came to like dinners and stuff, and he agreed to be the character, but he didn't really he wasn't as active as he has been since 2023. And the main difference between the Women Life Freedom protest and the Lion and Sun Revolution is that this time there was leadership. Because when the protest started, it was over the dollar price that reached 1,400,000 rial. It started from the bazaar, which is very significant because in all successful revolutions in Iranian history, the bazaar was a main driving force. And today, the bazaris are more or less, they're good with the government. If they were not on good terms with the government, they wouldn't have been able to survive economically. So that it was important that it started from the bazaar, but it was all over. And in the beginning, like first 10 days, it was hundreds of locations, but dozens to maybe few hundred people in each location. The turning point came on January 8th, when Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, everybody shouted his name in these protests, including ethnic minorities that shouted for unity, because everybody says they're separatists, and they shouted for unity, and they shouted his name. And the Crown Prince said, Thursday, everybody goes in the streets. And that turned the protests from hundreds or thousands to millions. The conservative assessment of the number of people who went to the streets on these nights is 5 million. There are also assessments of 30 million people in the streets, knowing they might be killed. If we look at the demographics of the people who were killed, most of them were in the demonstration age, which in Iran is between 15 and 30. That's the smallest demographic group in Iranian demographics, because most Iranians were born in the 80s, around the 80s, and their children, they have 1.35 children per family. So this is really the smallest age group, and still there were between 30 and 70,000 people killed. Now, one of the important things to understand is that the people who killed them were mostly not Iranian. During the 10 days of the protest, the first 10 days, there were reports about militia forces coming from Iraq, Hashd al-Shabi, Zainabiyun and Fatamiyun from Afghanistan and Pakistan. There were militias coming from Sudan to help the regime kill people, because there are not enough Iranians who are willing to kill their brothers and sisters for this regime. Everybody knows how to say Basij. Okay, it's true that the Basij people are the first to come to every demonstration scene, but the Basij is a voluntary organization On paper, they have 25 million volunteers. If there had been 25 million, or even 1/10 of that figure that were regime supporters and willing to kill their brothers and sisters for this regime, there wouldn't have been a need for so many proxy forces. The Basij is a volunteer organization, and most people volunteer because of the benefits. If you have carte Basij, you get discounts in stores, in a variety of stores, and if you get stopped at a road checkpoint and you show a carte Basij, they tell you, take care of yourself, you're free to go. If you're not, okay, in January after the protest, in these checkpoints in the streets, they stripped people to see if they have gunshot wounds, because if they did, they would arrest them. Okay, this is what happened in the security checkpoints in the streets. So most people in the Basij, most Basij volunteers volunteer for the benefits, or because their workplace, it's a prerequisite of the workplace. If you work there, you have to be a Basij member.
Tamar, can
So
you just
there are
explain
not
us?
enough.
Can you just
What?
explain us briefly what is a basij for us that don't really know the exact definition or the exact role of the basij
Yeah.
in the regime?
Yeah, Basij is the voluntary branch of the IRGC. IRGC is the Islamic Revolution Guardian Corps. It's not Iran. It doesn't have the name Iran in it. It guards the Islamic Revolution from the outside, that's Quds Force, the proxy array, and from the inside against Iran. Iran is not an enemy of Israel. Iran and Israel have a common enemy named the Islamic Republic. And more than the Islamic Republic is an enemy of Israel, it is an enemy of Iran. So the Basij is the volunteer branch of the IRGC. And as I said, most of them are regular people. It's like the red book of the Communist Party, or
Yep.
it's something that you just have to be a member. It doesn't mean anything.
Thanks. Very interesting, particularly about the proxies that came to Iran to get control of the demonstration and did most of the killing, as you said. That's quite fascinating. It's probably something we will talk about the other proxies in later in the conversation. But Dror, just where is the U.S. and Israel? Is it got into this picture of the demonstration. So was that a catalyst for the war, or that was because we did hear some speculation that Israel is preparing um, to go into a war later in the year, July, June, August.
So, yes, so we should remember that Israel attacked Iran nuclear facilities in June 2025, 6 months before all of those demonstrations popped out and erupted. And it gave, with the assistance of the American, final blow to the Fordow facility. It gave a major blow to the Iranian nuclear facilities. At the time, I don't know if you remember, Israeli politicians and Trump said that we have obliterated the Iranian nuclear program for years to come, but that wasn't the case. There has been reports coming throughout the months afterwards that Iran was trying to rebuild its nuclear facilities, specifically when it comes to a very specific new facility called the Pickaxe Mountain, a fortified tunnel in Natanz. That very suspicious activity were taking place over there. And that seems to send it to Israel and the Americans, the message that Iran is collecting whatever was left from the other side that were attacked, salvaging materials, equipment, and is preparing to go further with its nuclear program. So that was the situation that Israel faced in the months after June 2025. And then the demonstration erupted. And that gave another trigger for a more radical thought, I believe, in the Israeli security establishment and in the American security establishment, that something is dramatically changing in Iran, the way Tamar just mentioned, and there is a chance to to make a strategic change, not like taking out the nuclear facilities or the nuclear capabilities, but actually changing the regime. We should remember that just a few weeks before that, in January 2026, Donald Trump has an amazing achievement. He took out Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela, had the impression of a successful military operation to have a regime change. And under those conditions, you can imagine that the appetite to use the historic opportunity presented itself in Iran, naturally grown major protest against the regime, the experience from Venezuela, the need to do something because the Iranian regime is rebuilding its nuclear program. And that brought all those pieces together into a what seems to be a very ambitious plan to work together, Israel and the United States, to topple the regime and make a strategic change in the Middle East. So that seems to be the case that Israel encountered in January, February, that put everything in motion.
Tamar, I would ask you in a second how realistic those plans were, but before that, we remember Trump strong sentence, "Help is on the way." How does the protesters, the Iranian protesters, actually reacted to that?
Before help is on the way was after they killed tens of thousands of protesters. Before that, one day before he kidnapped Maduro in Venezuela, he said that he will not repeat Obama's historical mistake from 2009 when he didn't support the protesters. More than 100 Iranians were killed, and they were stuck with this murderous regime. And he said that the minute they start killing protesters, he will step in. Then the day after, he kidnaps Maduro. And that gave them motivation and courage to do things like burning mosques. Burning mosques is something that has never been done in any protest. One thing that's very important to understand about Iran is the identity pendulum. On one hand, Iran, it means the land of the Aryans. That's the meaning of the name if we go a few thousand years back. They're Indo-European. Cyrus the Great, the father of the first Declaration of Human Rights for its time. They're very proud of being, the cradle of civilization. They had 4 huge empires before the Islamic conquest. On the other hand, the Muslims won in 651 of the Common Era, and they have been Muslim for more than a millennium. So this identity pendulum between the Iranian identity and the Islamic identity is something that's very significant to understand Iran. And every time the regime pulls the pendulum one way, the people pull it the other way. So when the Shah made in the 1960s, he called it the white revolution of the Shah and the people. It was an amazing revolution. It brought vaccines and literacy to every village and a lot of other good things, some good things that backfired. But the purpose was to decrease the power of the clergy. And what happened was Islamic awakening and the Islamic revolution. The people who managed to bring the Shah's vision true, to make it come true, was the Islamic Republic with its repression and all the atrocities it has been doing in the name of Islam. And this is why they burnt mosques. And while the mosques are burning, Muslims all over the world are horrified and say, no true Muslim, no matter how much he disagrees with the government, will not burn a mosque. And the Iranians say, that is true. We are not true Muslims. We were forced to convert to Islam more than 1,000 years ago, but we were never Muslims. And they were watching the mosque burn and they were shouting, Iran, Iran. That it was almost it was a mythological event.
And Tamar, if we go,
and the reason they had the courage to do that is that Trump said that he will step in.
So if we go back to Dror, as Dror described it, that the U.S. and Israel they saw an opportunity there. if you're in the room together with Trump and Bibi, I'm sure you would be very happy to be in the company of those two gentlemen. What will you tell them just before when they started to think this about strategy for the next steps? Will you recommend them to uh, attack to actually try to help the Kurds or whatever?
On one hand, nufuz, which means in Arabic, but also in Persian, like foreign influence or foreign penetration, never ended well. On the other hand, the Islamic Republic also uses foreign forces to oppress the Iranian people.
Proxy, yeah.
So it is a war that involves foreign forces anyway. And what I would have advised them, and I think Trump's advisors may be from the Islamic Republic lobby, because after the crown prince said everybody on the street and everybody went to the streets, and after the internet was blocked and he lost tens of millions of views per video when the internet in Iran was blocked, and after even anti-royalists in Iran expressed support for the crown prince, Trump said, he's very nice, but we don't think he has support inside. I'm not talking about qualifications. I'm talking about support. They didn't realize that if they want the Iranian people to go in the street, they have to collaborate with the crown prince, and the calls for action have to come from him. During the war, because there was also an internet blackout, I wasn't sure if there was still support for him inside, because outside it was a little bit weaker. When the internet came back, people from the inside were angry with people from the outside for not keeping the support ongoing. So I assume there's still support. He's afraid. On the first day of the war, he went on social media and said, don't go on the streets yet, it's dangerous outside. And on the first day of the ceasefire, he also went on social media and said, the regime has too much suppression forces right now. It's too dangerous, and I don't want you to go out just to get killed. Wait for a word from me. The reason he said that is, while in the first days of the protest, there were reports of foreign militias coming in that were denied, and experts, I assume reading papers by the Islamic Republic lobby, said no, it's a very lengthy process with bureaucracy. It can't be. The videos show it, but it can't be. Now, militia soldiers themselves posted videos from inside Iran to say we are here. So he's afraid. He has every reason to. I don't know what's happening right now, but what I would have advised them is to collaborate with the Iranian people and do it through the crown prince, and understand that there is no negotiating with this regime for two reasons. One is that they lost legitimacy when they shot to kill and killed, massacred dozens of thousands of people. And the other is that there's no way to negotiate with Shiites. Because if they lose the battle, they won the spiritual war. If they die, they become shaheed. That's, when someone is killed by Israel, the message from the IRGC always says tabrik ko tasliyat. Tabrik means congratulations, because he just achieved the desired status of shaheed, and condolences because the families might be mourning. But you can't threaten them with death. You can't threaten them with destruction. They win anyway. And they just kept this narrative of we're winning. We're also a superpower. The spokesperson of the foreign ministry, when asked, aren't you afraid to go against a superpower? He said, we're also a superpower.
So I think that it's quite clear that there was a bit of miscalculation of the mentality of the regime. Dror, what was the miscalculation? I think we all agree that there was several levels of miscalculation in the strategic turn of the war. Everybody were surprised by the Straits of Hormuz being closed, but that was something that could be anticipated. What went wrong there?
I think what Tamar mentioned, the US and Iran were in actual negotiation just before the war started. If you remember, they were meeting in Europe, and just a few days before the war erupted, and Israel and the US struck, and there was an amazing quote by Steve Witkoff coming out from the negotiation that he said that Donald Trump doesn't understand how come the Iranian regime does not capitulate to the American massive military buildup in the Middle East that was supposed to bring them to accept the US demands when it comes to the nuclear program. That's an amazing example of misunderstanding the Iranian self-assurance, their will to stand firm on what they perceive as the right to have nuclear powers as well. I think the moment that something changed in the United States, again, was leaked thanks to the very helpful press activity in the United States. Also, in the months after that, the United States actually presented the Iranian the opportunity to supply them with enriched uranium to be used as fuel in their nuclear program, which is the excuse that the Iranians are using in order to go forward with the nuclear program to enrich uranium. They need that in order to fuel nuclear power plants. So the United States said, okay, we are willing to give you nuclear fuel for free. And when the Iranians refused to that offer and insisted on their own right to enrich uranium, I think that was the minute that somebody in the United States understood that the Iranians are playing a very dirty game here. So these are like few examples of misunderstanding. You asked about the Hormuz. I don't think anybody misunderstood the Hormuz situation. I think in Israel, and I'm quite sure that in the American security establishment, the scenario of Iran closing the Hormuz Strait, using it as a choke point to prevent and to stop any aggression against it is well known for decades. Actually, I think a week before the war erupted, the IRGC Navy has presented on Iranian TV a drill, an active live drill in the Hormuz Straits, demonstrating their capabilities to block the strait if something will happen. That was during the negotiation. So it wasn't a surprise. I think the issue was that politicians and high-level military echelon commanders were miscommunicating. And the level of the threat and the risk that was very much present and again, pretty much well understood by every professional American in the security establishment was just ignored by a very eager political leadership. Again, maybe under the impression of the amazing Maduro success a few weeks earlier, that we can go into Iran, make a spectacular military act, topple the regime, take all the mullahs out, and they won't have time to close the Hormuz Straits. I think that was the impression in the American political echelon, and that was a great mistake. And unfortunately, the military and the higher echelon of the security establishment in Washington weren't able to transmit to their leadership that it's a major risk, and we are not prepared to open the straits once they're closed. And I think that was the joker that Iran put on the table, and it pretty much messed all of the very beautiful American and Israeli military plans.
I will ask both of you the same question, and you can answer it from your both different perspectives. But before that, I would just mention that if anyone of our viewers have a question, you can put it in the chat box, and we can deliver it to Tamar or Dror. So the question is, what is before we go to the details of the negotiation at the moment and the deal that is on the table, what's the number one lessons of the regime at the moment? Particularly regarding to the nuclear capability of Iran. I would start maybe with Dror.
I think the regime understood. I think it already started last June after the first attack, the 12-day war, that they need the nuclear capability as an insurance policy. I think the Iranians, as Tamar said, they have a very deep historical mentality. They know very, very well what happens to a country that gives up its nuclear capabilities. Look what happened to Libya. After Gaddafi gave up its nuclear capabilities, Libya was toppled. On the other hand, you can look on North Korea. What happens to a country that stands firm, go forward with its nuclear capabilities, defy the international community, and have a proven nuclear capability? It is protected from any foreign intervention. I think this is the basic understanding of the Iranian from the events of the last year and a half. And I think the fact that they were trying to reactivate or activate the pickaxe site in Natanz was a very troubling sign that pushed Israel to go for another blow. And I think that if we are talking right now here in Australia, in Tel Aviv, I'm sure there are people in Tehran doing exactly the same, trying to understand what is going to be their best insurance policy from a further military intervention by the United States and the Americans. And I'm sure one of the main conclusions on the table is that we have to have some nuclear capabilities ready as soon as possible in order to deter the other side. That's a very risky situation.
Tamar, and we also know that maybe the change in leadership in Iran have also can contribute to this kind of decision.
We want to say before that Khomeini already said that weapon of mass destruction is haram, that it is forbidden in Islam. And Khomeini also reinforced this in a fatwa from 2010. But as Dol said, in the 12-day war, they started saying out loud, because the everything they say can be taghiyeh. Shiites have a legal right, halachic right to lie to the enemies of Islam. But they started saying out loud that, see, we need a nuclear program. Right now, the nuclear program is on the table in the negotiations. Last week, Ghalibaf explained on national television that in negotiations, you have to give the other side also something. You can't insist on everything. So we did agree to negotiate the nuclear program. We're not saying that we'll make any concessions, but we are willing to negotiate. Yesterday, the Council of Experts, that's the council that elects the leader and is supposed to supervise the leader. We don't really know what they do, because everything they do behind closed doors. They issued a letter saying that opening the Strait of Hormuz is breaking the promise of the people who are supposed to negotiate, and that the nuclear program should not be negotiable. So it's part of Iranian honor. Honor is more important to them than life. Last week was the Ashura, and the main lesson from the Ashura, the main message from the Ashura, the martyrdom of the third Imam of Shiite Islam, is that it's better to die with dignity than to live with humiliation. So that's part of their, keeping their dignity, keeping their honor, even if they don't need it, even if they're offered to buy enriched uranium. It's their haqqe musalam. They say it's their natural right. So and maybe it's also something to fail the negotiations. It seems that none of the sides want to go back to war, at least not now, but none of the sides is very eager on an agreement. They break it all the time in the Straits of Hormuz, in Lebanon. The very fact that Lebanon is part of their negotiations, when it's parties that are not under the complete control of any of the sides. That's also part of, I think they don't really want to reach an agreement. And as Dror said, before the 12-day war and before the 40-day war, there were negotiations. The Islamic Republic, senior officials in the Islamic Republic say themselves that the negotiations are to buy time. And that was most probably also what Trump did before the 40 Days War, until he can bring all his forces to the Gulf area.
That's
Persian
definitely
Gulf area.
another misunderstanding and miscalculation of the West. Dror, can you give us a little bit of, I think it's a nice segue to give us a bit of a brief of where is the negotiation between the US and the regime are at the moment?
I think a very good example would be the saying of Lindsey Graham, the Senator Lindsey Graham, one of Donald Trump's close allies. He said, I'm very worried because of this MOU, because everybody reads it very differently. So I think there is a very different perception in Washington and in Tehran. It's a very vague paper.
And in Jerusalem.
And in Jerusalem, which is not part of the negotiation. It has very limited influence on that anyhow. But the main thing is what's happening in Tehran and Washington. I think both sides are looking at this negotiation, at this MOU in a very different way. Trump tweets every other day. The Iranians claim he's constantly lying. He's saying they are constantly lying. There is a total lack of trust between those two sides. There is a total lack of mutual understanding of what is the end goal, because if Iran perceives itself as the winner of this war, because it survived, it was able to launch missiles till the last day, its proxies are still active in Gaza, in Yemen, in Iraq, and in Lebanon, and it blocked the Hormuz Straits and forced a massive economic disaster globally. So Iran feels it has the upper hand, so why should it give any concessions? And if you hear Donald Trump, they have like a magnificent victory, destroying the Iranian military, navy, air force, and whatever. So you have a very competing narratives coming from Tehran and Washington. It's a very weak base for any kind of negotiations, and those conflicting narratives are actually what we've seen in the last 48 hours in the Hormuz Straits. And the Iranians attacked a ship that crossed the Straits without coordination with Iran. The US denied that any coordination needs to be done. And then we have another cycle of fight between those two. I'm very pessimistic regarding the future of those negotiations. Again, if the Iranians feel they are the winners, the Americans feel they are the winners, concessions are hard to see.
Tamar, it looks like the regime got a lot of confidence at this stage, keep on attacking those ships and playing hard in the negotiation. They feel that they have the upper end?
When we say the regime, and the one thing I disagree with, Joel, is that the Iranians lost. The Iranians were betrayed by Trump. It's the Islamic Republic that...
I stand corrected.
Yeah. But what we should understand about the Islamic Republic is that right now the situation in the government, in the top, is what we call in Persian khar to khar, dog eat dog. Everybody against everybody. Trump decided to negotiate with Ghalibaf and Araghchi. Ghalibaf, the Speaker of Parliament, and Araghchi, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. They don't have a mandate. Of course, they don't have a mandate from the people, because the people don't give any mandate to the government, but they also don't have a mandate from the IRGC and from regime supporters. There have been and still are protests in Iran by regime supporters against these negotiations. I said, I talked before about the Council of Experts that said that it's a betrayal of their promises, opening the Straits of Hormuz. But the protests say, Ghalibaf, Araghchi, khune rahbaram chi. Ghalibaf, Araghchi, what about the blood of my leader? You know, Khamenei has not been buried yet, and you negotiate with his killers. To that, Ghalibaf said, negotiations is for the Iranian people, because the situation, economic situation is very bad, and we will ask his blood by the destruction of Israel. But they don't have a mandate from the people. It could be a tactic of negotiations to say, see what we have to deal with at home. Give us some more so we can sell these negotiations to them. But it's many times protests arranged by the regime backfire and develop into real protests. Yeah. That's one thing that can happen. And I do believe that there is also a clash in the top, because you asked about the change of leadership. There hasn't been regime change, okay? Trump keeps using this word. Yeah. I do not think it means what you think it means. What happened was that the supreme leader was killed, and the picture of his son with flowers was inaugurated. No one has seen Mujtaba Khamenei. And if we're talking about Shiite Islam, okay, the 12th Imam of Islam is the hidden Imam. He went into hiding when he was 4 or 5. First, because he was afraid that the enemies of Islam will hurt him. And that time, when he was the first period of time, there were people who were in touch with him and brought letters from him, which is exactly what's happening now with Mujtaba Khamenei and a few people who bring letters from him. Nobody saw him. Some of these people have not been seen either. Okay, Ahmad Vahidi, the commander of the IRGC, talks but was not seen as far as I know. So it's, you know, they're just, it looks like they're creating another martyr or another myth or another legend. Yeah. And different people can say different things that the leader said.
Tamar, to this point, we received several questions around the question of the possibility of the regime, the Islamic Republic regime, will fall in the near future. How do you see it? Is that still a possibility, or with the current atmosphere, it would be very unlikely?
I don't know about the near future. I'm not a prophet. I always say we're one day closer than yesterday. I still assess that we're one day closer than yesterday. There was a fear in January that if it doesn't work this time, people will lose hope and lose motivation, and not try again. The cycle in Iran so far, because, you know, you can't use history to predict the future, because things happen. You know, I can explain things after they happen, but before they happen, it's much harder. But what we did see after the protests is that the spirit didn't die. Every funeral, every memorial service ended with dancing, singing, clapping, showing that the spirit is not dead. Memorial services are completely secular, with no clergy, no Muslim prayers. The eulogies are in pure Persian, because when you speak Persian, you can use an Arabic component, so they don't use the Arabic component. And they sacrifice their sons and daughters, but the spirit is not dead. Right after the protests, there were people saying on social media, we're mourning, we're hurting, but we're waiting for a word from the Crown Prince to go out on the streets again. On the other hand, until it happens, we don't know if it will succeed. I am encouraged by the fact that no regime has ever lasted forever. And this regime needs a hidden leader, because they don't have anyone that they could agree on as a leader. The IRGC, all the seniors who became Shahid, okay, who were promoted to Shahid, were replaced by people who were called back from retirement because they don't have enough people growing from inside the organizations. They don't have a young generation. The head of the council, the committee of the I don't remember the name right now. I will. The constitutional guardian. He's 99. Okay, Ahmad Janati is 99 years old. He was 99 in March, and his post was extended by 1 year. It's a very old regime. The young generation, even young regime supporters, are not promoted. You need connections to be promoted. So I don't see a very bright future for for this regime. I don't know when and how it will happen, because as long as there's money, and right now, the regime is hanging by a thread with all the internal clashes and the economic situation and everything. And then Trump extends them a rope, a huge rope, to save their economy. And Mohsen Rezai, who is one of the advisors to the leader, at least that's how he presents himself, said, of course we'll use it for missiles. And Trump said, yeah, they should have ballistic missiles because everybody else does. I don't know what's happening inside of Trump's head. I think
that you're
next
not the
time
only
you should
one,
invite
Tamar,
a child psychologist.
You're not the only one that don't know, so don't worry about that. Dror, we got received another question in the Q&A box about the future and the role of the Gulf states. Obviously, that's the relationship with Iran and with Israel changed. There was attacks from Iran to the Gulf state. Israel protected, sent some protection measurement. How do you see the future there?
Before we go to the future, let's talk about what happened to the Gulf states. I think the Gulf states just lived their worst nightmare. For years, the threat of a military action by the United States and Israel against Iran was the main factor that was supposed to push Iran into some kind of negotiation, some kind of concessions. And this threat has materialized, and it materialized in the worst possible way. Iran survived. It was able to hit Israel.
The Islamic Republic survived.
The Islamic Republic survived. It was able to hit Israel. It was able to hit American targets. It was able to hit Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the Emirates. It was able to choke global economy by taking over the Hormuz Straits. And I think from the Gulf states, it's a strategic disaster. They face a major country in the region. Okay, Iran is 100 million or so people, a regional superpower that has just survived the attack by the world's #1 superpower. You can imagine that the appetite that Iran has and it's willing to compromise is very low. That means that from the Gulf states, you have a very aggressive partner on the other side of the Gulf that has already demonstrated its ability to severely hit by the end of the day, weak economical assets that all of those countries have. By the end of the day, we're talking about energy production, energy export, and that's about it. And when Iran, the Islamic Republic, was able to threat and use that threat, I think the message was very clear. We already see the side effects or the of the results of that situation. We see Qatar engaging directly with Iran, making all kinds of concessions, giving money, trying to make some understanding. We see the Saudis already interacting with the Islamic Republic. The Emirates, which were, like you said, the pinnacle of the Israeli-Arab cooperation. Israel sent troops to defend the Emirates. The Emirates actually participated actively in attacking the Islamic Republic. We even see and sound and hear voices coming out of the Emirates that they need to recalculate, maybe have some kind of cooperation in Iran. So we are in a very problematic situation. If you are a prince or a king in one of the Gulf states, you see what the United States was able to achieve in Iran. You are not very impressed. You know what you have suffered because of this war, and you need to recalculate your move and maybe stretch a hand and try to have some kind of a deal with this very aggressive new neighbor that has just demonstrated he's willing and able to project power in a very destructive way.
I want to show the Islamic Republic's side of the same thing that Dror described of the Gulf countries. The Islamic Republic, by doing that, that was a Shiite mistake because they won the battle, but they lost the spiritual war. Because their spiritual war was leading the whole Islamic world. They were competing against Saudi Arabia on hegemony on the whole Islamic world. And they were having conferences and conventions of leaders of Islamic countries in Iran, and say we will protect everyone and we're the protectors of the whole Islamic world. This is also why they insist on Lebanon. This is also why they support Hamas, which is a Sunni organization. And then they shoot at the Gulf countries. And the minute that Pezeshkian said, it was very early in the war, we're sorry for targeting our neighbors, it will not happen again. A few hours later, the IRGC shows who's really in charge, and they attack the Gulf countries again, and write in the IRGC Telegram channels, we are the ones in charge now. The president doesn't understand anything. We're at war. We are in charge. Which is also what happens every time with agreements reached in this in the present negotiations with the United States. The government says one thing, and then the IRGC shows another thing. So I think that by shooting the Gulf states, they maybe they won this war, but they can never present themselves again as the protectors of the Islamic world.
Yeah, thank you, Tamar. I just wanted, in the context of your Iran versus the Islamic Republic and the use of proxy. I don't know if you saw there was in the World Cup there was some fans that came with the Islamic Republic flag to the stadium, and when the media started to talk to them, apparently
they speak Spanish.
They're proxies, yeah, basically people that got money.
They're poor Mexicans who were paid $100 to $300 a day to carry the Islamic Republic flag because fans only carry the lion and sun flag. FIFA forbade the lion and sun flag from stadiums, but it's still there. The only ones who wave the Islamic Republic flag are the Mexicans.
So that's I found it quite amazing. We don't have much time, but it's still there is something I want to touch with you, Tamar, particularly is the situation, the status of the Jewish community. We all know that there is a small Jewish community that still lives in Iran. Do you have any contact with them, or do you have any kind of indication of what's their position at the moment after the war, during the war?
I have no contacts with the Jewish community, never had, in order to keep them safe. I don't think it's safe for them to be in touch with me. I'm a target of the IRGC. They have visited my computer in 2015, and I don't know if they're here now or not. If they are, hi. The Jewish community in Iran, like other religious minorities, are propaganda hostages. They have a representative in parliament. When a Jew goes to vote for parliament, they put one fingerprint for the representative of their province and one for the Jewish representative. They have freedom of occupation, they have freedom of religion, they have all these freedoms. The price is that every time the Islamic Republic tries to condemn Israel or show support for itself and can't do it with regular Iranians, they do it with the Jewish community. For example, in October 2023, when the Islamic Republic was doing its best to support Gaza, to support Hamas, they asked fans in a stadium to wave Palestinian flags, and there were 3 fans who waved Palestinian flags, and the whole stadium advised them where to shove it. And it was so loud that the live broadcast cameras couldn't filter this noise, and the live broadcast just stopped because of these loud advice. They tried to have a moment of silence for the shaheeds of Gaza, but all they got was whistles and boos and everything but silence. When they tried to do a conference in a mosque in support of Gaza, nobody came, but they did manage to fill a synagogue. They did manage to bring I don't know if all, but the frame was full with Jews of Iran protesting against Israel. And of course, when you're a leader of a community of 9 to 25,000 people, who depend on your cooperation with the regime, and they tell you, go gather the Jews and condemn Israel, you don't have the option to say no. So we can't tell by these actions that this is really what they think or not. What I found encouraging during the Lion and Sun protests is that the Jewish community was silent, because usually in times of war or things like that, the Jewish community steps forward and supports the regime. No, officially, the official outlets of the Jewish community. And during the Lion and Sun protests, they were silent. Now they went back to supporting the regime. Actually, the Jewish representative in parliament even not condemned, but said that the regime was not doing right when the regime arrested doctors after the protests for treating protesters, because doctors in hospitals were not allowed to treat protesters, only the security forces, and doctors said, we treated Iraqis and Sudanese. And some doctors released protesters before security forces came to arrest them or to perform death checks, which means to make sure they're dead, shoot them. And doctors were arrested. And the Jewish representative in parliament is a medical doctor. And he said the first role of a doctor is to save lives, which was criticism of the regime. That was very courageous of him.
Shahar, I think it should be understood that like the Jewish community in Iran is a puppet, is a tool by the regime to project some kind of normality. They do not hate the Jews. They are not anti-Semitic, of course. They just hate the state of Israel, Zionism. Those are sounds that we're familiar from here in Iran, in Australia as well. Of course, nobody hates the Jews. It's just the Zionists. And I think the regime is using the Jewish community in a very cynical way in order to promote this very this exact approach. And like Thamar said, the Jewish community in Iran has zero capability to stand against the regime. They have to consent. They are coerced to take all those acts of showing loyalty to the regime. But as far as we know, they exist. They are not hunted down in the streets of Tehran, but they live under very, very harsh conditions, and they are not free to express their free will or the free opinions in any shape or form.
I want to add that until November 2024, they were only propaganda hostages. In November 2024, it was shortly after Nasrallah's elimination, and then True Promise 2, which was not very successful, and the Israeli attack that opened Iranian airspace. The first Jew in Iran since the revolution was executed. He was sentenced to death. He was supposed to be executed in May. There was a big international effort to save him. This is how I was exposed to his verdict, which was not a just verdict. And the timing of his execution was not coincidental. It was because the Islamic Republic needed to signal to Israel that we have hostages. And after the 12-day war, there were mass arrests everywhere, not only in the Jewish community, but also in the Jewish community. Iranian Jews went out of family WhatsApp groups that had Israeli family members. Friends of mine who have families in Iran were not able to say, "Happy birthday, Mom."
We almost out of time, but there is one more thing that, through your conversation, I wanted to touch, and I want to hear both of your opinion about there was quite a lot of spies being caught in Israel that the IRGC approached, offered them some money, and they cooperated or not cooperated. I think there are about 70 different cases now in Israel. Can you tell me a little bit about it? Is it efficient? What kind of people are actually they are targeting, etc.?
I can say just on a very high level, I think what we're seeing is the RGC attempt to have a very wide net being thrown into the Israeli society. They are not very selective. I think we also, who are the people that they are able to recruit? People from the sideline of the Israeli society, people not from the highest quality. You don't see high-level spies in the Israeli security establishment or political establishment. These are people from the general society, not the highest level, like I said, and their ability to supply the Iranian with any substantial information is quite limited. Nevertheless, these are super important propaganda wins for Iran, for the Islamic Republic, when it's able to recruit and deliver some kind of proof of trying actually to penetrate the Israeli society in the same way Israel security establishment has been doing to Iran for decades in a very, very efficient way. So in this kind of a tit-for-tat game on spy games, I think it's an achievement from their part. But I think when it goes to the actual value of the information they can achieve from those people is very limited.
Tamara?
I don't have a lot to add to that, but the people they recruited many of them were people who were in financial trouble. A lot of them was new immigrants who were not efficiently absorbed in Israeli society. And the missions they gave them were things like spray children of Ruhollah in Israel. Nobody in Israel is afraid of the expression children of Ruhollah. Most Israelis don't understand what's children of Ruhollah. Ruhollah is Khomeini's first name. Or there was one who was I don't know why he went on trial, because what he did was get orders and then fabricate some things with AI to show that he did and got the money. So, and while Israel, as we saw in the 12-day war, had people like everywhere
on the ground
and very, very valuable information. On the other hand, we only know about the spies who were caught. We don't know about the spies who were not caught. So, I don't want to underestimate anyone until we know more. And before we finish, I have one optimistic story. So tell me when to tell it.
Tell it now, and when we'll adjourn. Yeah.
Okay. After one of my lectures in the north of Israel, a woman from the audience came to me and said, in 1979, I went to Iran with my mother. And usually when people say that, they want to say what a beautiful country, beautiful people, wonderful food, wonderful views. What she wanted to say was, we stood on the shore of the Caspian Sea, that's the sea in the north of Iran, and we looked north to the USSR, 1979. And my mother said, do you think we'll ever be able to visit there? That's my optimistic story.
Thank you for that. We'll take it from this this evening and keep the optimism. And not Dror, you said you're a bit pessimistic about all of it, but here you go. I want to thank Dror and Tamar. Thank you very much. I think if it was up to me, I would continue this conversation for another an hour or so. So thank you very much. Thank you for everybody for joining us. The recording, there was a couple of questions about that. Yes, we did record this session, and it will be available in our website, the Jewish Independent website, and our YouTube channel. So stay tuned for that. And I think there will be a quick survey after we end this conversation. So we are very happy to hear any of your feedback. Thank you very much. Let's hope for some good news from Iran.
I want to thank all the people who connected at 7:30 in the morning on a non-work day. I wouldn't have done that.
Night.
Evening. Oh, it's evening. Oh, so
easier.
Oh, easier. I'm not thanking you at all. No, but if you have, if there are questions that were not answered, you can write to me.
Definitely. Thank you very much. And 7:30 at night for Australian is like very, very late. So you still did a very big effort, people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.